The first thing he noticed wasn't the river, or the old wooden rails, or how the bridge split the village into two halves like a scar. It was the cat, a black cat, sitting dead center on the planks, perfectly still, staring straight at him as if it had been waiting for the exact second his front tire touched the bridge. No flinch, no blink, just those eyes, flat, patient, and wrong in a way you can't explain until you've felt it. He told me later he'd never been afraid of cats in his life. But that night, with the village behind him and the bridge ahead, he felt something cold tighten around his chest, like the air itself had decided he wasn't supposed to cross. He swore it was true. Not true the way people say after a few drinks, not a story polished for attention, but true in the irritated, defensive way someone talks when they're still trying to make sense of what happened. He didn't even know the exact name of the village. He only remembered it was small, rural, and divided by a bridge that everyone treated like a line you didn't step over for fun. He'd come there with a friend of a friend, the kind of last-minute visit you agree to because you're young and bored and it feels harmless. They stopped at a local bar first, one of those dim places where the air smells like smoke that seeped into the walls decades ago, where the regulars look up just long enough to decide whether you belong. There were a few guys with him, all locals, all relaxed in that confident way people are when they're surrounded by their own territory. That's when they offered him 10 euros, not as payment, as bait. Right across the bridge, one of them said, grinning like it was a joke that had been told 1,000 times, and come back. My friend laughed. 10 euros didn't matter. It wasn't about money. It was about the way they watched him when they said it. Like they weren't sure if he'd do it. Like they weren't sure if he could. He agreed, because the easiest way to lose respect in a room like that is to hesitate. They gave him an old bicycle from behind the bar, something with a squeaky chain and a seat that sat too low, as if it belonged to a teenager who'd outgrown it. He rolled it out into the night air and felt the village settle around him. Low houses, dark windows, the faint sound of a TV somewhere, and beyond that, the river. Black water reflecting nothing. He asked where the bridge was, and one of them nodded down the road without standing up. Nobody offered to come along. Nobody said, "Be careful." Nobody even followed him to the door. They just watched, smiling, like they were waiting for the punchline. The closer he got, the quieter it became. It wasn't the normal quiet of a village at night. It was a kind of quiet with intention, like the world was making room for something. His tires hissed softly over the road. His breath sounded too loud. The bike's chain clicked like a metronome counting down. Then he saw the bridge. It wasn't huge, but it didn't need to be. It stretched over the river in a straight line, wooden planks and old rails, and it felt separate from everything else, like it belonged to a different hour of the night than the road behind him. The village lights didn't reach it properly. The far end looked darker, not because of shadows, but because the air seemed thicker there, like fog without fog. He slowed before the first plank, feeling stupid for being nervous, and that's when he saw the cat. Black. Perfectly black. No white patch, no collar. Sitting right in the middle of the bridge, exactly where you'd have to pass. It wasn't crouched, like it was ready to run. It wasn't tense. It sat upright, with its tail wrapped neatly around its paws, like a statue placed there on purpose. It stared at him. My friend told me the strangest part was how the cat didn't look curious. Cats are curious. They tilt their heads, they blink, they decide whether you're interesting. This cat looked like it already knew the answer. He stopped the bike completely. The river below made a slow, wet sound against the banks, and the cat didn't react. He cleared his throat, as if making noise might break the spell. "Hey," he said, softly, because for some reason he didn't want to shout. "Move." The cat didn't move. He tried to laugh at himself. He told himself it was just an animal. He pushed the bike forward, rolling onto the bridge, expecting the cat to spring away at the last second. It didn't. He pedaled, heart thumping, closing the distance, and at the moment his front wheel was almost aligned with the cat, it finally moved, just a little. Not a jump, not a run. It shifted its head slightly, tracking him as he passed, eyes following him with slow precision. He made it by without touching it. He was halfway across when he risked a glance over his shoulder. The cat was gone. Not walking away, not sitting at the edge, gone. Vanished from the center of the planks like it had never been there. There was nowhere it could have disappeared to that fast without him hearing it. The bridge was straight, the rails were open, the planks were loud. An animal running on them would have made noise. He told himself it had slipped between the rails and dropped down the side. But when he looked, there was no splash, no movement in the water, nothing. He reached the far end, rolled off the bridge and stopped. He was suddenly aware of how dark that side of the village was. The houses looked the same, but the space between them felt wider. The road ahead felt less like a road and more like a corridor into something unknown. It wasn't a dramatic thought, just a quiet instinct that made his skin crawl. "Okay," he muttered. "Done." He turned the bike around, and there it was, a white cat. Same position, same posture, same stillness. Dead center of the bridge, exactly where the black cat had been, as if someone had switched them when he wasn't looking. It wasn't a dirty, stray white. It was clean, almost glowing against the darkness, so bright it looked wrong under the weak village light. Its eyes were fixed on him with the same flat patience. For a second he couldn't breathe, because it wasn't just another cat. It felt like a continuation, like a sentence that hadn't finished. He stared back, trying to force logic onto it. Maybe there were two cats. Maybe the locals fed them. Maybe this was a coincidence that looked eerie because he was already on edge. But his body didn't believe that. His body reacted the way it reacts to a threat you can't see yet. Hands sweating, throat tight, pulse loud in his ears. He stood there holding the handlebars, frozen. The white cat didn't move. He stepped forward, pushing the bike slowly toward the bridge again, and the cat's head turned to keep watching him. Not startled, not alarmed, watching. He stopped again. It felt, he said later, like the bridge was no longer a thing you crossed, but a thing you entered. Like the planks were a threshold, and the cat was the guard at a gate. He waited. He tried to out-stubborn it. He thought, absurdly, that if he stood long enough, it would get bored and walk away. Minutes passed. The cat stayed. The river sounded louder now, and the darkness at the center of the bridge seemed deeper, as if the night there had more weight. The village behind him was a faint promise of warmth and voices. The village ahead was silent. He considered turning back and calling the guys from the bar, telling them their joke was stupid. Then he remembered the looks on their faces when they offered the 10 euros. The way they didn't seem like pranksters, the way they seemed like people repeating a ritual. He made a decision that he hated. He would cross. He would not look at the cat too closely. He would not think. He would just cross and be done with it. He pushed the bike onto the bridge, rolling forward. The planks creaked. The rails felt closer than before. The white cat sat perfectly centered, forcing him to pass within inches again. He got close enough to see details, Clean fur, whiskers that didn't twitch, ears that didn't flick. It was too still, too composed, like stillness was its natural state. He wanted to look away, but he couldn't. He told me he had an irrational thought, a childlike one. If I make eye contact too long, it will know something about me. His fingers tightened around the handlebars. He reached the point where he'd have to pass it. The cat's eyes were wide and unblinking, and then without warning, the fear inside him snapped into something sharper. Anger, embarrassment, the kind of stubbornness that makes you do stupid things just to prove you're not scared. He almost lifted a hand, almost reached toward it, just to touch it, to prove it was real, to prove he could. But something in him remembered the black cat, how it had watched him like it owned the bridge. He stopped himself. He made a different choice. He closed his eyes. He pedaled hard. He rode through the center of the bridge blind, jaw clenched, breathing fast, repeating the same thought like a prayer. Just get back. Just get back. Just get back. He expected a thud, a yelp, the sick feeling of running over something alive. There was nothing, no impact, no sound, only the creak of planks and the rush of his own pulse. When his front tire hit the road on the near side, he opened his eyes and didn't look back. He didn't want to see whether the cat was behind him, ahead of him, beside him. He just kept pedaling, fast, straight toward the bar. Only when he reached the light spilling from the doorway did he slow down. His legs were shaking. His mouth felt dry, like he'd swallowed dust. Inside, the guys were exactly where he'd left them, like they hadn't moved an inch. They watched him come in, and the moment they saw his face, a few of them stopped smiling. Not because they felt bad for him, because they recognized the look. Someone slid a beer toward him without being asked. Someone else pushed the 10 euros across the table like it didn't matter. My friend didn't touch either. He sat down, staring at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. "What the hell was that?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady, trying to make it sound like a joke. No one laughed. One of them, his friend's friend, the guy who had invited him to the village, leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You saw them," he said quietly. My friend blinked. "Them?" The locals exchanged looks that weren't playful anymore. It was the look people give when a thing you all know has just happened again, and there's no reason to pretend otherwise. "The black one," another guy said, and then the white. My friend stared at him. "You knew?" The man shrugged in a way that didn't feel casual. "We didn't know you'd see them, but everyone does." My friend's laugh came out thin. "Everyone sees two cats on a bridge?" "Yes," the guy said, as if the answer was obvious. "Everyone who comes from outside, not people from here, not usually. Outsiders." My friend's skin prickled. "Why?" No one answered immediately. Finally, the oldest of them, still not old, maybe mid-30s but older than the rest, spoke in a voice that suggested he'd said it before. "The bridge divides the village," he said. "Not just the houses. People say it divides other things. Luck, health, sleep, the kind of life you end up with. It's stupid, right?" He didn't sound like he believed it was stupid. My friend swallowed. "So what are the cats?" The man's eyes flicked toward the window, toward the darkness where the road led to the bridge, then back to my friend. "Some say they're just cats," he said. "Some say they're a warning. Some say they're the same thing, just changing, like the bridge makes them do it." "That's insane," my friend said, but his voice lacked conviction. The man nodded. "Maybe. But tell me this. When you passed the black one, did it blink?" My friend hesitated. "No. And when you came back and saw the white one, did it move at all?" My friend shook his head. The locals stayed quiet, letting that sit in the air. Then one of them said softly, almost respectfully, "You didn't look back." My friend frowned. "What?" "You didn't look back after you crossed the second time," the guy repeated. "Good." "Why?" The guy's mouth tightened. "Because if you look back, you might see what's really standing there." My friend tried to scoff, but the sound died. "What's really standing there?" The older man exhaled. "Listen, I'm not saying there's a monster on the bridge. I'm saying the cats are like a sign. If you go across and come back, the village accepts you for the night. If you refuse, you'll spend the night restless, hearing things. If you look back at the wrong moment, you'll bring something with you. That's what people say." My friend felt his stomach twist. He stared at his drink and realized his hands were still trembling. "You did this to me," he said, anger rising. "You offered me money like it was a game." "It is a game," someone muttered. "A game the village plays." My friend looked up sharply. The oldest man leaned forward. "We don't make the rules," he said. "We just grew up with them." My friend wanted to demand proof, a story, an explanation that would satisfy the rational part of his brain. But in that room, surrounded by men who weren't laughing anymore, he realized proof wouldn't help. Proof would only make it more real. "Still," he asked, because he couldn't stop himself, "what happens if someone looks back?" For a moment, nobody answered. Then his friend's friend said, "There was a guy once, came from the city, did the crossing, saw the cats, laughed about it, came back, looked over his shoulder right in the middle of the bridge." He paused, eyes lowered. "He said he saw the cats standing beside each other." He continued, "Black and white like twins, and behind them, between the rails, something tall, not a person, something that didn't have a shape he could describe. He said it looked like the space behind them was deeper than the river, like the bridge opened into somewhere else for a second." My friend's mouth went dry. "And then?" he forced out. The man shrugged slightly. "He didn't sleep that night. The next day he left. He told people it was a bad dream, but he never came back. And a week later he called one of us and asked if cats could follow you." Silence. My friend leaned back, trying to breathe through the tightness in his chest. "So what? If I had looked back, a cat would follow me home." The older man's eyes met his. "Not a cat," he said. My friend laughed again, but it sounded strained. "This is ridiculous." "Maybe," the man agreed, "but it happened to you. And it happens to everyone who comes here for the first time. That's why we offered €10. It's a test. We wanted to see if you could cross and come back without making it worse." My friend stared at them, and for the first time he felt something other than fear. A slow, creeping sense that the village itself had participated. That the bridge wasn't just a bridge, that it was a mouth, and the cats were its teeth. And he'd just ridden between them. He spent the rest of the night in that bar, not because he wanted to drink, but because he didn't want to be alone. Every time the door opened, he glanced toward it, half expecting to see a white shape step in calm and still. Nothing came. Eventually, close to dawn, he walked back to his friend's house. The sky had turned a thin gray, and the village looked harmless in morning light. He almost felt embarrassed again for being afraid. But when he passed the road that led to the bridge, he noticed something. In the dirt near the edge of the path, as if it had been placed there carefully, were two sets of paw prints, one smaller and darker, one lighter and wider. They stopped exactly where the road turned toward the bridge, and then they ended, no tracks leading away, No tracks into the fields, just two sets of prints that appeared and vanished like punctuation in a sentence he wasn't meant to read. He didn't tell the locals. He didn't want to give the story anything else to hold on to. He left the village that day and didn't go back. Weeks later, he was in his apartment in the city, trying to forget it. He'd mostly succeeded. Life fills the mind with noise, work, friends, screens, traffic. The memory of a bridge and two cats becomes just another weird story to tell at parties. Until one night, very late when the building was quiet, he woke up for no reason and heard something outside his door. Not scratching, not footsteps, a soft, patient tap. Then another, then a third. He lay still, staring at the dark ceiling, and waited for it to stop. It didn't. He told himself it was a neighbor. Pipes, the building settling, any explanation that didn't make his skin crawl. He got up, barefoot, and walked to the door. His hand hovered over the handle. Then he noticed something that turned his blood cold. Under the gap at the bottom of the door, in the hallway light, he saw a thin line of white. Not a paper, not a shadow. A sliver of fur, like something pressed close to the doorframe from the other side. He didn't open it. He backed away, heart pounding, and in his head he heard the sentence the locals had said like a warning. Don't look back at the wrong moment. He waited until morning before he opened the door. The hallway was empty, but on the floor, directly in front of his apartment, were two small objects that hadn't been there the night before. A 10-euro bill and a single black cat hair lying across it like a signature. He stopped telling the story after that, not because he was tired of repeating it, but because he realized something. The village wasn't the scary part. The bridge wasn't even the scary part. The scary part was how easily the line could be carried elsewhere, how a boundary could relocate, how a local thing could behave like it had never been local at all. When he told me the story, he kept insisting it happened to everyone, every outsider who ever arrived. He said the locals told him that with the casual certainty of people describing rain. He said it like that made it safer, like repetition made it normal. It didn't, because if it happened to everyone, then it wasn't a prank, and it wasn't a coincidence. It was a mechanism, a door, a test the village performed, or the bridge performed, or the thing that watched the bridge performed. And tests don't exist without a reason. Months after he told me, I found myself on a late-night walk, alone, crossing a pedestrian bridge near my neighborhood. Concrete, modern, covered in graffiti, nothing like a rural village bridge at all. I thought of his story and felt stupid for it. City lights, cars below, normal life. Halfway across, I saw a cat, black, sitting dead center, perfectly still. I stopped without meaning to. It stared at me with the same flat patience he had described, and I felt that familiar tightening in my chest, the sensation that the air had decided I wasn't supposed to cross. I told myself it was just a cat. I took a step closer. The cat didn't move. I took another. The cat's eyes tracked me, slow and precise. Then, from behind me, softly, gently, like someone offering a harmless dare, I heard a voice say, "Go on." I froze, because there hadn't been anyone on the bridge when I stepped onto it. I didn't look back. I kept my eyes on the cat, and in the bright city air I suddenly understood why the locals didn't like outsiders staring too long at the wrong thing. Because the moment you accept the game, you become part of it. I walked forward. The cat remained. And just before I reached it, I saw something that made my mouth go dry. Beside the black cat, In the exact same place, a second shape began to resolve in the light. White, clean, perfectly still, as if it had been there the whole time, and my eyes were only just now learning how to see it. And somewhere behind them, in the space where the bridge should have been only a bridge, the darkness looked deeper than it had any right to be, like a door opening a fraction, waiting for me to make the smallest, most human mistake in the world, to turn around and check.